Michael Francis was 15 years old and he lived in the Fort Greene projects at 116 Navy Walk. On March 1, 1956 at 9 p.m., he was in the community center at Public School 67 at St. Edward Street and Park Avenue playing some ping pong. Lots of other people were engaged in various activities like that at the center, which was a very normal practice for the neighborhood kids. It was a very popular center. But while they were enjoying themselves, 8 boys, including a certain James Carter, entered the community center announcing, "We're the bishops." They were armed with garrison belts, pistols, bats, and a meat cleaver. And they pushed some of the boys around who were playing at those various games, and they knocked them to the floor. Now there was one guy in the group whose nickname was Dagger, and he fired a gun. He approached Michael Francis and he demanded of him, "Are you a chaplain?" Now let's just pause here just for a brief moment. I want to mention that there are very many chaplains gangs in Brooklyn, and the chaplains that Dagger was asking about were the Fort Greene chaplains. Now Michael Francis, he denied being a member of the gang, whereupon Dagger accused him of lying and threatened to kill him. So in self-defense, Michael threw a pail at him to escape. He tried to run away, but he was blocked by the other bishops. Michael Francis backed up against a metal locker, and then a bishop with a nickname of Sheriff hit him on the head with a meat cleaver, which caused Michael to fall to his knees. Now, while he was on his knees, another bishop, this one weirdly nicknamed Donald Duck, stabbed him in the stomach with a knife. And it was at that point that the bishops fled the scene. Michael Francis, not sure how he did this, he actually ran out of the building over to Cumberland Hospital. And the reason I say I don't know how he did it, because his injuries were very, very serious, and I'm going to have more on that in a moment. Now, it was at this moment that the police were called. Now, during this fight, another boy was also attacked, Gene Brooks of 110 Monument Walk, and he was found lying on the sidewalk on Washington Walk 4 blocks away. He was stabbed in the back, treated at the hospital, and sent home. I would say that he should consider himself blessed to be stabbed in the back and then sent home on the same day. Now, Detective Nathan Shapiro of the 88th Precinct was summoned to the scene, and when he got there, as we know, Michael Francis was already in the hospital. So he went to the hospital and he interviewed him and other witnesses there, as well as other witnesses in general who saw the fight. And through this, he was able to secure the nicknames of the bishops who were involved in the assault. And through the youth squad, he found that the one who was nicknamed Sheriff was Fred Ellison, and the one nicknamed Donald Duck was James Carter, who I mentioned before. And he picked both boys up that same night at their homes. James Carter admitted that he was at the center, but he denied assaulting Michael Francis or doing any other criminal act. Fred also denied assaulting Michael, but he admitted that he was a member of the bishops. Now, there's another boy who was arrested, a bishop, and his nickname was Dice, but his case was dismissed. So you got a lot of very interesting and colorful nicknames here. James Carter said that he and his friends were bishops and that there was talk in the gang about how some Fort Greene chaplains had taken the hats of some bishops the day before the school attack. Now, he said that he and his group went to Public School 67, which is where the community center was, knowing that it was the turf of the infamous Fort Greene chaplains. As for weapons, he said that he had a little knife, Sheriff had a meat cleaver, Dagger had a gun. Shouldn't he have a dagger? And then another guy by the name of Spike had a knife. And they walked on foot, and as they walked there, others joined the war party. Now, at one time in their approach, they separated and went in different directions. Carter said that his group contained about 25 guys, and when they finally got to the school, all told about 5, although I did hear that 8 went in, so between 5 and 8 went into the school building while the other bishops waited outside. He said that as they entered, Dagger took out a gun and he shot about 3 times in the air and said, "We're bishops." And he said at this point, Michael Francis ran past him and I throwed a little knife at him. It hit him. Now, Carter said that he did not see what Fred Ellison, that's Sheriff, remember, was doing with a meat cleaver. All in all, Donald Duck said that the whole incident took a few minutes, and when Dagger said, "Let's go," Everybody left. Now, you can tell that he denied it earlier, but now Carter is admitting that he stabbed Michael Francis in the stomach. He said that after he got out of the school building, he threw the knife away in some bushes. He admitted that he stabbed Michael Francis with a dagger, and he showed that it was about 8 inches long. And he said that the whole incident was a rumble against the Fort Greene Chaplains, and he added that later it was found out that the ones that they attacked, that's Gene Brooks and Michael Francis, they weren't even members of the Chaplains, although they did hang around the school where the Chaplains hung out. And so obviously they were lumped in with the Chaplains. James Carter said that he felt badly about what happened, and that when he was out on bail, he met with the Fort Greene Chaplains at the Youth Council, and that now we're all friends. Fred Sheriff Ellison was asked for his story too. He admitted that he went with the others to the community center at PS 67, but he denied that they went down there to fight. And this is what he said: "All I know is that we went down to call things cool." He said that Carter and Dagger entered the school building. He said he didn't see Dice or Spike there at all. And he went down to the school with a large group of about 50 people. And he said that some guys were running around throwing things, and that Dagger fired a gun 2 or 3 times. And he said he did see Michael Francis with a garbage can, and he said, "I hit him on the head with the meat cleaver." Now, Fred said that he found the meat cleaver about 2 days prior and brought it with him because he knew that he was going into the territory of a hostile street gang, that's the Fort Greene Chaplains, and that there could be a fight. He said about the fight that it was dumb. The man we hit wasn't even a chaplain. And then it came out that the real reason why Fred went along was because if he didn't go on the rumble, he was afraid of being called a chicken. Now, as a result of the injuries received in the fight, Michael Francis required hospitalization at the Cumberland Hospital, which we had already mentioned. He was there from March 1 to March 11, 1956, and the diagnosis at the hospital was penetrated stab wound of the abdomen and a scalp wound. And the hospital report stated that an exploratory laparotomy operation, I hope I said that right, was performed and repair was done to the laceration of the liver and cleansing and packing of a head wound. So he was stabbed in the liver. Very serious. Michael Francis said that he was on the critical list at the hospital for 7 days, but that he fully recovered. But he got tired much quicker than he used to before he was hospitalized. He also got frequent headaches, which I guess is what happens when you are smashed on the head with a meat cleaver. He also said that he was nervous and fearful of assault by friends of the defendant. That would be James Carter. Michael said that he was never arrested before, and he was never a member of any street gang. Now, the background of the rumble was quite simply a gang rivalry between the bishops and the chaplains, who were mortal enemies during the 1950s. Now, in this case, we're talking about the Fort Greene Chaplains. Bill Smith, a youth board worker who worked with the bishops, said that the bishops had been victimized by the chaplains, who he described as one of the most antisocial groups in Bedford-Stuyvesant. Now, I'm not sure why he would say that, because the chaplains in this case were from the Fort Greene projects. Anyhow, the history between these two bitter enemies that culminated in this attack on the community center at PS 67 in the Fort Greene projects, it actually went back to the previous year, specifically to Dodgers victory night. You see, for the World Series victory in 1955, the Brooklyn Dodgers secured their first ever World Series championship by defeating the New York Yankees in a 7-game series. Now, this victory was particularly significant as it was their first and only World Series title while based in Brooklyn. And the Dodgers achieved this after losing the first 2 games of the series, then winning 3 in a row at home to force a decisive Game 7, which they actually won 2-0. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of celebration in Brooklyn. So after the game, a group of chaplains, Fort Greene chaplains, rode a truck to Bishop's Turf and started a fight, during which James Donald Duck Carter, who we talked about before, was hit on the head with a bottle. Bill Smith said that he was successful in keeping the bishops from retaliating. On another night, the chaplains put a gun against the head of Fred Sheriff Ellison, who we also talked about, and it misfired. Again, the bishops did not retaliate. There was no prosecution as a result of these attacks because it was against the gang code to go to the police. So the rumble at Community Center PS 67 was immediately sparked by an incident which occurred a few days prior. A bishop was beaten by the chaplains and his hat was taken. Again, Bill Smith tried to keep them from retaliating, but the rumble occurred anyhow. Bill added that since the attack on the community center, that peace reigned between the bishops and the chaplains. I'm a little skeptical of that because I believe their war continued to the end of the 1950s. Bill also said a new change took place where the bishops would go to the police in case of any other incident, and this actually happened when a bishop was beaten up and his hat taken, and this was reported to the police, and this led to the arrest and prosecution of a notorious figure from Fort Greene named John the Bob. Well, that's the background history to this rumble, but I want to go into the background history of James Carter, aka Donald Duck, and I think it's going to surprise you. James Carter spoke freely and easily, and he said that he liked sports, especially baseball and basketball, and he used to be a member of a baseball team. He played in the schoolyard of PS3 and in different baseball fields. He also liked to watch professional baseball games, and he often went to watch the Dodgers at Ebbets Field. He enjoyed the movies, which he usually visited on Saturdays with his friends. He liked to read history books, although he did admit he couldn't read too well. However, he did read the Daily News, the newspaper. On the radio, he liked to listen to sporting events and musical programs, especially rock and roll. On television, he watched sports and he watched comedy programs. James didn't smoke. He didn't drink, although occasionally he had some wine. He said he was never drunk. James never used drugs in any form whatsoever. The youth board worker that I mentioned before, Bill Smith, well, he actually knew James Carter, and he said that James was well regarded in the group and he was a good athlete and a fine boy. The proprietor of a delicatessen located near James's home said that he knew him for 14 years, and he said that James was a nice, fine boy. James admitted that he was a member of the bishops and that he had been a member for about 8 months. He said that some boys like to join the gang because of their love for fighting. Others joined for protection from other gangs, but the reason that he joined, it was different. He actually joined for friendship. Now, the bishops were part of the youth council in the neighborhood, and that the youth board worker, that's Bill Smith, he tried to get them not to fight, and he arranged for them to go to baseball games, and he tried to organize them into athletic groups and attend events with other groups. And he said that he has some position of leadership, that would be James Carter and the bishops, and that in fact, James was one of 2 members of a war council. So he added, however, that the rumble was not a decision of the war council, it just sort of happened. Now, James described himself as a friendly person, and I do believe that despite the attack. And I wonder, is that where he got the nickname of Donald Duck? Is Donald Duck a friendly character? James said that he got along with everybody, and that's the reason why he had many friends, and his best friend actually was his co-defendant, Fred Sheriff Ellison. Now, James's parents reported that their son was always well behaved around the house, and that he liked to play ball, and he liked to work, and he had many friends. And the boys that he hung around with were mostly boys that he met at school or who lived in the neighborhood. James's parents just couldn't understand why groups of boys would fight with other groups of boys. Now, this was a very serious crime. I mean, he could have easily have killed Michael Francis. So Donald Duck was convicted and sent away, but he did well in the institution. He didn't cause too much trouble, and I could tell just by the way the reports were written about him that once he got out, James Carter would no doubt make a good name for himself. And he had both parents backing him up and who were supporting him, so that was a huge help. So that's the story of Donald Duck of the Bishops. I hope you enjoyed it. I really appreciate you watching this video, and I will see you on the next one. Have a great day.